Well, hi, everyone. I'm Richard Corley. I'm a professor in the theater program at UIC, and we're here to have our first live streamed audience discussion. So this is a new thing for all of us, and I hope we'll have no technical glitches, but if we do, please bear with us. We're here to talk about UIC's opening production of the season, which is a very unusual and extraordinary production called Reverb, which is been filmed by our producers here at UIC, and we're going to be having a lot of people who participated in this production and joining us today. But we also happen to have Professor Cynthia Blair, who is a professor of African American Studies and History at UIC, and also the director of the African American Cultural Center. So, Professor Blair, hi.
Hi. I'm so glad to be here and excited to engage in this conversation about such a dynamic and in many ways kind of piece of work, which I think meets the challenging moment in so many ways. So I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Well, I want to thank you. I want to, we will get to other folks here. I see that some of the writers have joined us, and we'll go to them and introduce them. And I see our dean has joined us, and we'll introduce everybody in just a moment. But first, I want to go back to what you just said, Cynthia, and talk about your response to this really unusual piece, and perhaps talk about it as a response to what's happening right now. I mean, that was the idea behind this piece. Could our students and our alums respond to the current moment in a way that felt authentic to them and felt fresh, and not only in terms of the content, but also the form. Everything about it was an attempt to really respond to the moment in a way that was unusual for the theater. We're in this very unusual time in the theater. We all have to figure it all out. And one of the things I love about this piece is that it feels like it's figuring it out, you know, as it's being made, right? It's creating the plane as the plane's in the air, as we like to say in our department a lot. And so I wonder if you can respond to your viewing of this from that perspective, or any perspective you like.
Sure. Well, I think first I'd like to talk about form and talk about the ways that the form, my encounter with the form, I guess that's what I'll focus on initially. So the way that I kind of stepped into this is with kind of an expectation of theater that clearly this piece is challenging, right? So I have a conventional understanding of what theater is, and you might even call it a desire, right? There's just a certain way that I'm expecting to be addressed, and a certain way that I'm expecting myself to respond. And this piece, you know, for many of you in the audience, I both read it and also watched what it eventually became. And in both iterations, both forms of the piece, I was challenged to figure out how it came together, right? And to try to think about the ways that the creators, like the amazing ways that the creators really pulled from this particular moment, not just to speak to the moment, but to speak to how art can transform the moment and our response to the moment in really exciting, dynamic, fresh, and new ways to give us a new vision, new angles of vision on the moment that we're in. And so the form kind of, it echoes in many ways just the cacophony of the moment that we're in, you know, kind of the overload, the unexpected input that we're getting from social media, from all forms of news, from our daily lives. And so somehow the form itself mirrors that in a way that I think is important to acknowledge, and it's very much a part of what's at stake, in my opinion, what's at stake in the piece itself. So I really appreciate being pushed, like nudged out of my my passive expectation. My expectation is just being seated, in this case at my computer, but being seated and receiving. I think one of the aspects of the form of the piece that's important is that it's not simply about receiving even each of these individual segments or scenes, but that you're drawn into a conversation about the moment, based on the perspective and the many stories, as well as the themes that thread through each of these pieces and pull them together as a whole. And so I'm really like excited by what I've been able to experience. And so this is about experiencing theater differently. And it's also about the necessity of thinking about theater and thinking about experiencing theater differently that I think meets the moment in an important way. So that's kind of my initial thoughts on the formal question.
In terms of, that's great. That's fantastic. I think you've really hit on what makes this not only unique, but also how it responds to the current moment in terms of the amount of information it responds back to the current moment in a very interesting way. When you think about not only the form, but what the piece is saying, what were the things that you took away from it in terms of how it spoke to you as a thinker and a historian and a writer? How did it speak to you?
So what's compelling to me is I kind of took the time to write down all the themes, right? You know, just to kind of go boom, 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 boom. What are the themes that jump out at me here? And then also to kind of think of this as a document, so to speak, right? Like if 50 years from now, 100 years from now, a historian were to come upon this piece, what would it tell us about the current moment? And not just the current moment, but the voices that are being expressed at this moment. So some of the things that have jumped out to me, one is about, which is perhaps the most obvious, is voice, right? The voices that come through here are so powerful, they're clear, and they're angry, they are contemplative, they are engaging the moment from a variety of perspectives. And those perspectives include like individual personal pain, from the perspective of love. And I really do kind of want to think about how love floats through this in different ways. From the perspective of a critique of white supremacy and as it affects us on the micro level. Mm-hmm. So voice is a tool here, and the voice, like the collective voices here, are not always saying the same things, but that the juxtaposition of different voices, different views, is very much like a theme of the piece itself, I would say. So that jumps out at me. The difficulty of a shared language kind of jumps out at me as well. And I think that's one of the kind of most interesting tensions in Reverb, that in certain moments, it's, we have a shared language. We live in and occupy a shared language, but it doesn't mean that we have shared meaning. And it's that kind of the tension and the challenges of kind of bridging meaning and within the context of a shared language is something that I think the voices in here are struggling to do in a couple of the pieces. Identity, like, you know, Black and brown identity. Masculinity jumps out, and I could kind of talk to the individual pieces, but I think all of these themes are being really worked on and reflected upon in each piece. And they're speaking, you know, the different aspects, or sorry, the different scenes, and work through these in different ways. The need for connection at a time that we're isolated is also, I think, a theme that jumps out here. And we can see that. And I'd love to talk about this Blender app. Like, what does that mean? Love in the time of Corona. Even I Can't Breathe, the one where everybody, you know, is being overloaded by the news, but they're all connected nonetheless through their the phone. That somehow, like, thinking about connection, both the dangers of it and the overwhelming nature of it, but also our real need for is worked into this. The concept of complicity, the complicity of like, I'm thinking about the fern piece and like how the metaphor for all kinds of things, right? But who's complicit in the death of that fern, right? And what does the fern itself represent? I think is really a fascinating little window into this larger question of complicity. And I think an underlying theme that may not be something that the creators themselves are focusing on, but as a historian, I can't help, but that is history itself, right? How does this moment speak to a history that like discreetly or specifically is referenced just in a couple of places? For example, with the reference to Frederick Douglass and Afrosheen, right? I mean, I love that, right? That moment, what is going on there? And I would love to hear more about that particular reference, but in this wonderfully lighthearted piece that's also, you know, kind of probing something deeper, right? So I think there's tons of themes going on here, and they're all kind of mashed up in a way that, you know, I keep using the term challenging, but it is, you know, this piece is a challenge, you know, and in a very good, productive way. And that challenge forces us to be active participants in the creation of the piece as we're watching it. So I'll just stop there, but those are some of the things that jump out for me.
I think that's really fantastic, Cynthia, because you've located so many intros into different aspects of this piece, the way that the multiplicity of voices and the multiplicity of ideas are contained within this piece, and without an attempt to kind of resolve, but it's all just put out there so that they're all speaking to each other. I love that. And also the way that different forms of theatrical means are used: dance, song, different kinds of use of film. All of that is used in this piece wonderfully. I think that's a great way of moving toward bringing some of the creators of this piece into it, so that we can talk to them and see what their point of view is on everything you've said. And I thought maybe it would be a good idea here, because I'm really happy to see that Lydia Diamond, our faculty member, has joined us. Wonderful playwright and one of the driving creative forces behind this piece. And Lydia, I wonder if you would talk a bit about the piece and the development of the piece in the writer's room. And also, I'm really so happy to see that we've got a number of the writers here, which is really great. And maybe you could introduce them as well. So, hi, Lydia.
Hi, Dr. Blair, thank you so much for those beautiful comments. I apologize for being late. I was having Zoom issues. And I'm so glad that all of you are here. How to begin? And I don't, and apologies for if I'm restating. Well, Rick, let me just tell me if you introduced sort of how the project came about, what it was born of.
No, I'm quite assuming that people have seen it by now. So I didn't really talk about too much about the beginnings of it, the evolution of it. We were
I'll contextualize just a little bit.
Right.
So the world exploded. There was already going to be a wonderful production that had been already curated by their wonderful director, Jessica Fish, and life happened, and COVID happened, and the movement took force, and it was suddenly a time for a different kind of voice and a more rigorous critique. And I knew also a population of students, well, being even just young, but also that we're so lucky to have such a diverse student body in the School of Theater, that our young people would have something to say, and possibly and probably things to say that would not necessarily be that which we would know how to. And so what we decided to do is pivot. Oh my God, that word. But we decided to pivot, and we hired a writer's room of writers who had recently graduated from UIC, from our department. And it was a true collaboration. It was 3 weeks of rigorous 9 to 5 kind of work. And we would work in the room and have inspiration, read each other's works, talk about them. And then the writers would go off and do their writing. And I'm so glad that we worked this way, that the department supported us to work this way, because there was something very brave in it. There was an uncensored kind of desire to get out of the way and let people have a voice. And so that's sort of where we started. And I just saw it for the first time today. I was in for the 3 weeks with the students. And I'm sorry, the professional writers, the very, very professional writers, all of whom I think will be in writers' rooms in 5 minutes and hopefully will hire me. But I got out of the way and this incredible thing was born. I'll introduce you. So we have, and I'm going in the order in which I see them on the screen. We have Cameron Townsend, Reilly, Alex Hanson, I always say that wrong, Alex, and I'm so sorry. Fia Ringo, Marie-Ange, Louis-Jean, and who else is here? We also had Carla Corona, and am I missing someone, you guys? That's it. It was just 5 of us. Yes. And so shall I let that be the introduction and let the writers take it away? Rick?
I think that's a great introduction. Thank you so much, Lydia, for that. I mean, that really sort of launched it in, and maybe we can just go to each one of them individually, maybe in the order that you introduced them. Cameron, would you speak about your involvement in this, and maybe you can tell us. Again, we're assuming that people have seen the play by now. So maybe you can talk about the pieces you worked on and what the experience was like.
Well, and I will say before Cam starts, because this is what I do, I interrupt and then people have to wait. But I will say that the experience of seeing it wants for several different seeings. I only have seen it once and learned afterwards at the cast party, the Zoom cast party, that there are Easter eggs throughout, and could tell that just the way I selected the interactive way that I was entering it would make for a different evening with a different sort of message and thing to say, depending on the randomness of the way the pieces landed. And so maybe the writers want to speak to the pieces they wrote, but also we had a lot of conversations about the fact that it really was a true collaboration, and in the spirit of true collaboration, and particularly in a venue that is online, sometimes it might make more sense to let it be the room's voice. That doesn't mean that the writers can't decide how they talk about their pieces, but I did want to give them room to not have to specify their pieces, which was a very purposeful thing in the program. So, yeah.
Great, great. Cameron?
Yeah, so I'm Cameron Reilly, UIC alum of the class of 2018. Lydia Jess and the Genius level production and design team have brought me on to the project in the same way they had contacted everyone else. I had we made it very intentional that our pieces, even though representative of our unique thoughts about the time, were to remain anonymous, but I can certainly talk about specific ideas surrounding the Blender app, the Black and Brown Knights, the appearance of Frederick Douglass, and the prison phone call scene, and the opening and the outro.
Great, great. So, well, I think you know, one of the things that I think people would be most interested in hearing about is, you know, your experience of as a writer during this process, and what you felt was most important for you in terms of how you spoke through this process.
Yeah, you know, I went into the process knowing that our task would be impossible, that it would be absolutely impossible to give voice to all of the voiceless people suffering from the negligence of our executive leadership during this time period. And I accepted a certain grace in that, knowing that my colleagues, with their genius level creativity, could fill in the blanks where I messed up. And so I spoke to the lived experiences that I had underwent, and I just loved how in the creation of all of this, a lot of it being like on the spot and just being hashed and rehashed over the course of time, it really all just came together so beautifully. And after hearing it from my friends, everyone really got something out of it. Everyone did feel seen in ways, and that's what we really wanted to do. When people were just shut in and isolated from one another, we just really wanted to, or at least I just really wanted to make people feel seen and make people feel heard, from the voices of the incarcerated to many, many, many more. So it was a beautiful experience. A few of my friends are in the call that play Dungeons and Dragons with me, so they know me as a writer of fantasy. Now you all see that I write other stuff too.
Rick, I would like to add, I don't know what our time is, because if I'm using too much time, I want to make sure all of the writers get a voice.
We're going to have about 45 minutes. So okay. We started at 2, so we'll stop about 2:45.
Well, then I wanted to add that our writers all had playwriting experience previously, but this was all of our first time, well, all of their first time in a writer's room. The piece lives in a sort of hybrid place of, is it theater, is it playwriting, you know? And one of the hardest things, even with playwriting, is going from that place where you've had this thing that's yours in this incubator, and you've sort of birthed it, and now it goes into the hands of other people and morphs into something that is more collaborative. Howsoever, in the theater, the playwright is the word, the last word, and the director and the production aren't allowed to change even a comma or a period. This is a different process that can be also in and of itself challenging, and in it also, I think, antithetical to the thing that we said we were doing, right, which was giving us all a voice. I say antithetical not to say that this play isn't everything that Cam just said it is in terms of representing so many voices, but also I think it will be interesting to hear some of the writers talk about what they were intending to do, what they did, and what they saw, because some of it'll be more expansive than what they would have ever imagined, and some of it'll be slightly different or repurposed. And so I just wanted to make a space for the writers to be able to know that you can say what you want to say.
Great, thank you for that. Alex, would you like to join in here in this discussion as one of the writers in the room?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Hanson. I was on the writers team as well. Being invited to be in the project was wonderful. Getting the email from Lydia, hey, there's a writer's room. What do you think? And it was...
I'll pay you.
Yeah. But it was like after graduating, because I recently graduated into a pandemic, it was wonderful to have someone reach out that I see as a mentor. I've had her as a teacher, and get that recognition that beyond the academic realm, what I'm writing or what I'm thinking about or what I'm seeing is worth, you know, other people seeing it. So there was a huge compliment, confidence from that. But the nature of the work was always going to be tough because we're living in it. And I think there's this understanding of, okay, yeah, you're writing about how you feel, but writing scripts, writing stories, even though they're imagined, there's so much of us that we write in it. So I knew that I had to learn how to divorce myself from that so I can get edits or learn how to approach things or learn how to say things so it has, you know, a bigger impact on people. They identify with it more, or, you know, just appreciate the story more. So there's a lot of learning from really great, talented designers and artists and writers. I don't think I'll ever forget this experience. The piece that I wrote and the works that I wrote for the show came out of a place of pain, a lot of pain and anger and frustration. And I just feel like, I don't know how, you know, what the breadth of this conversation is, but with the murder of George Floyd, it just, you know, I had to do something about it. I had to write something about it. And the piece that I wrote, you know, it challenged me. It challenged some of the actors, but ultimately it seemed like there was this agreement that the work I wrote was worthy of tackling, even if it was difficult, and that was meaningful to people. And they felt like they were doing something in their own way. And I can't describe what that means to me, that my feelings, the way I see the world, what I'm thinking about, what I want to say, other people agree and they want to say the same thing, and they just want to talk about it in its way, in a different visual or different writing. So yeah, so I left, you know, this is the end of the project, which is surreal. I feel like we were in the writer's room for forever, and then it was rehearsals and editing, and here we are. But yeah, I just walked away with a huge appreciation of artists and UIC and all the people who took a chance. So
Thank you so much, Alex.
yeah, thank you.
Fia, hi, Fia Ringo is here, and talk. What was the collaboration like for you?
Hi. It was a incredibly unique experience. Obviously, it was born out of so much of a unique kind of environment. But the thing about it that I guess was the most challenging and beautiful for me was a lot of the time, like Lydia said, a lot of us had playwriting experience already. And when you're writing a play, a lot of what you're doing is reflecting and kind of thinking about your past experience or history or whatever it is. What we were challenged to do with this piece was think about everything that's happening right now in this moment and how it connects to history, which is, you know, Dr. Blair, like you were saying, with the connection to history, it seems a little bit vague, but it's actually exactly the breadth of the piece, because it's so ridiculous how reflective this point in time is of how much of our history that we've had. So a lot of the creation of the piece was, here is a very vague outline of what we're expecting of you. Write a whole bunch of stuff and we'll see what we can do with it. And
I want to say to the writers also, copious amounts of incredible work. I'm hoping very much that we can figure out how to publish this as an anthology, because I was surprised and we were all humbled by how much there was. And the selection process, the curatorial process, was just as much about how it could serve the telling of the story and what we would have to sacrifice just for real estate. And it was somewhat heartbreaking to not be able to include just everything.
And it was so, I mean, every discussion that we had about every single piece was a product of another piece or a seed for a future piece. Like some things were put in the final cut that were suggestions made just off the cuff. Like someone was just like, this would be kind of an interesting idea. And then we sat down and we wrote it, and then it was in the final product. Mm-hmm. So like the entire process just continued to be a journey until it was posted and was live the entire time. Like there was never a concrete idea that any of us have, I feel like, as writers, of what we were gonna see. Because after, you know, writing and everything was done, we didn't really know what was gonna happen, except Alex was a little bit more involved in Cam, I guess, during all those processes. But it was an incredible process that I think is going to have to be duplicated from now on in this new reality that we have here, because every day is new things. Every day is new expectations and limitations and different things that we can or can't do. So I think that it should be seen as a model of things, of new ways that we can make art in this new world, because I feel like a lot of people are in pain because we're mourning the world that was. And now we have to figure out how to make a new one rather than just hoping it'll go back to that.
Yeah, that's great, Fia. That's very well said. I think one of the things I wanted to, you know, as we continue to talk to each of the writers, talk about was, I noticed this when I read the pieces, but I also very much, of course, noticed it when I saw the whole thing put together, how much space there was in there, not only for language, but also for movement, for dance, for the ability to for actors to express themselves in different ways too. I mean, one of the things I thought was, people who've been actors also were involved in this, because they knew how to write for actors and they knew how to leave expressive space for actors too. So I thought that was really unusual about it. I want to go on to Marie-Ange. Hi, Marie-Ange. And Marie-Ange Louis-Jean. And can you talk about your experience with the piece?
Hello, can everyone hear me?
We can, sweetie.
Oh, I see.
You're muted. Oh, no, I think we heard you for a moment.
Yeah, because I think you're on two different devices.
We can hear you.
Yeah, I'm on. Jesus Christ. Hello?
Now we can hear you. Great.
Okay. I'm on my phone and my computer because camera issues, and then anyway.
Well, now that we've met you, if it would help, maybe if you turned off your camera, we can hear you. We just needed to see you. And thank you for that.
Hello. Hi, my name is Marianne. Oh God. My involvement in the piece has been, I feel like I'm always searching for a way to describe how I feel about this piece. It was healing, but it was also very traumatizing in a lot of ways, and it was eye-opening and freeing, which made me feel like if I was able to feel all those intersections of things, then I'm giving other people the ability to feel that as well, which further grew my excitement to keep writing. And so a lot of the process was like rapid fire writing, you know, up till 3 a.m. because all of a sudden I had a random idea, and if I go to sleep, it's not going to be there in the morning. So it's just constant writing and experimenting and thinking of new ways to challenge what box we have been prescribed with. And it's been very wonderful to experience this with a bunch of humans who are so supportive and love writing and art as much as I do. So yeah.
Can I add that
Did we freeze?
no, I froze. I'm trying to find the words exactly, but you know, in the work that I do in my writing, I spend a lot of time acknowledging the tensions between what I'm pushing against and the container that owns and disseminates the work and what that means. And it is a problematic tension. And so you can, I, at a time like this, when there is so much to say, so much to fight for, so much pain and frustration and a desire to shout, the fact that even the structure of the piece, because it has to, because of the what am I trying to say? Because of the way we have to make theater right now, right? It's asking us to confine a thing that's wanting to be expansive into a space that is small and square and confining and regimented, and then logistically confined even more. And so I think that what that means in terms of being, well, I'll just say myself, being a Black woman, making art in a world in which the more successful I am, the more the stages on which I put my art are white, and the audiences are white and wealthy and older. And you think, what am I doing? What am I making? And is it relevant? And I think what's exciting about this medium is that the audience can be what the young people bring to them, which is huge. And the reality of that, there are containers and what that means and how that feels in a moment like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Carla Corona has joined us now. Hi, Carla.
Hi, Carla Corona.
How was your experience on Reverb? Can you talk about your collaboration?
Yes. I don't know. It was very interesting for me because I never truly saw myself as a writer. So I was like, I'm not a writer. I just write from here and there, you know, or journal.
Wait a minute, you wrote a play. What are you talking about?
I know, but I was
hire anyone into the room who wasn't a writer, but go on, whatever.
So I always felt that kind of way, you know. So by doing this, I don't know, it just kind of like opened something in me, and I was able to express myself in a way that I never had before, and that was something beautiful for myself. And I knew that I wanted to create something that sounded like me, that felt like it was for people like me, you know, for my community. So I feel like this gave me the freedom to do something like that. I don't know, the whole thing was just kind of fast and exciting, and it was like, write this, write that, and I was like, okay, I guess. Yeah, it was everything kind of new and exciting for me. I had a great time.
Fantastic. You know, I think that one of the, you know, when you talk about fast, exciting, learning new things, working in different ways, obviously that was true for the actors involved in this, and we've got at least two of them here. I see Lauren Littlejohn is here and Yortana Suleiman is here, and I wonder if Lauren, could I ask you to jump in here and talk about your experience as an actor in this piece? I saw so much work in this piece and so much of your voice as an artist in this piece. Are you there? Hi, Lauren. Can you join us for a moment?
Yes, I had a feeling I was going to be called on, so I was trying to figure out what I wanted to say. Hi, everyone.
Oh, you know, you guys were fabulous, by the way. You were incredible, all of the actors, all of the writers. It was such a beautiful thing, and I didn't get to say that. Lauren, oh my God, go on.
Thank you. My contribution, honestly, it was so unexpected, this entire journey. I just was very amazed at how flexible and vulnerable everyone was, and having something to say with every single piece. And I felt like I was using this as a way to process everything that was going on, because I felt like making art right now just made sense, and I didn't understand how to do that on my own before being involved in this piece. And I felt like I had all of these things to say, but just nowhere to put these words. And I was just very grateful to be asked to be on this. And yeah, it was a working process. Everything was in the works at all times, which made it an even better experience, because that's the reality of life. You know, nothing stays that static. So we have to be able to adapt when we can. But yeah, there was so many creative minds in the space, and have everyone put in their input and create such a thought-provoking piece was magnificent. And even having this conversation right now, I'm hoping that other people are having these conversations as they continue to watch the pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yortana, what about your experience?
Hi. It was so daunting. It was terrifying. I think before getting into this, I was grieving the loss of art as we know it, you know. I was like, I'm never gonna be on stage again. Coronavirus has taken over. This sucks. And then this happened, and the next fear that came up was, how do we make art through a screen? Will it be as impactful and exciting and meaningful as the energy we're able to create in person? And I was terrified at being perceived. I was terrified by having to say something when something needed to be said. I think Lauren put it beautifully. But having these writers do the work for us was great. I think all the pieces that were made did what they needed to do, and it was interesting. Sorry, I ramble on, so just tell me if I need to cut it out. It was interesting for me existing in sort of a middle ground as a Middle Eastern person within these spaces. Trying to find a balance of, when is it my turn to speak? When is it my turn to step back? How do I exist in the intermediate space between the conversation, the conversation that needs to be had right now? And I think the way these pieces were written and the opportunity they gave for me as a woman and as a person of color, as a non-Black person of color, to speak my truth, but in a way that was appropriate, was really appreciated. And I'm so lucky I got to collaborate. I think it was exciting that I got to have a say in what I got to say. That's not something I'm used to. I'm used to, as an actor, having the words in front of me and that's it. And I just have to, I have to do my dance and go. But being able to work with Cam and Fia on all of these scenes and bring myself into the work was something different and unique. And then getting to see myself was strange and I hated it, but I loved it. So I'm just very thankful for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Yortana. Thank you. And thank you to all of the alums and the students who participated in this. It's an extraordinary piece. And Dr. Blair, I wanted to go back to you and just get your responses to all of these artists talking about the work and you know what it's brought to mind for you after incredible thoughts you had at the beginning of this discussion.
Well, I think a couple of the things that jump out to me, you know, and it's obvious to anyone who sees the piece, is like the word urgency just kind of jumps out at me. There's a real urgency in the piece. And I also see like these young artists like really taking control of this piece in a way that I think is really, it's lovely to see and it's important to see. And it gets back to what I was saying about voice earlier. I mean, one of the questions I would have in this is maybe off topic, but I'm just thinking about the form and the question of voice went into making this. Is this only like suitable? Is this way of creating art, creating theater only suitable to young voices, right? Like could I do, I'm not an actor, but you know, is there a way that this models something that can go, that can travel, right? That can be used in other kinds of contexts? Because I must say, I'm so drawn to what I'm hearing. And it would be, I mean, I think it's not just the form of the piece, but the process itself that I think needs to be replicated. And that can be productive of insights, new kinds of conversations, and new ways of thinking about the forms that, you know, wherever we are, whether artistically or academically, the forms that we tend to be kind of limited by. So I really appreciate hearing that. The other thing that jumps out at me, and I think Cam said it earlier, one of the first things he said was that he was given an impossible task. You all were given an impossible task. And I think that, again, speaks to the moment. How in the moment can you reflect on the moment? Like, how do you use art to create a commentary on something that's you're in the midst of, right? How does a reflective process happen? Like when you're in crisis, when we're in crisis, how do you reflect? Nonetheless, right, as impossible as that task was, it feels, I think it's that impossibility that has created this work that's so open. Like there's something very open about it. And that openness is in part that I can drop in anywhere I want. Like I really enjoyed that, you know, there's no sequence, required sequence to the piece. Mm-hmm. And that I can, like, for example, I think I started with Love in the Time of Cholera, 24th week. All right, so I'm just kind of thrust into this thing that's already begun and I have to figure it out. I'm trying to figure it out, and I go back. But still, it makes sense, right? How that happens, I don't know. But, you know, I'm kind of thrown in. And so the openness of the piece, and again, the way that it calls the viewer to kind of co-create in a way and in space for that, I think is really important. So even though the task seems impossible, you managed to do something here, right? Something that is reflective, is in conversation with the historical, the weight, the sadness, the pain of the historical moment, but also the generative possibilities of the moment that I think is really wonderful to see. What else? I have a kind of a counter question for the creators if we have time. And that is it possible like to have created in this climate, in this need for like expressing the multiple voices and perspectives that are in this piece? Is it possible to create something that is like narratively, you know, conventionally, a conventional narrative, right? Like, is this form like a decision, or is it a reflection of the moment? And is it possible to kind of say, okay, let's tell a story, right? And what would that story look like? Or is this the story? Is this the kind of story that meets the moment? So that would be one of my.
I wonder if Cameron would take a shot at that. What do you think, Cameron?
Thank you, Dr. Blair, for posing such an interesting question. One that all of us have certainly been grappling with as we've constructed the reverb as we know it, grappling with the fact that stories have beginnings, middles, and ends. We begin at one point and we end at the other. The reason why reverb was chosen to be the way that it is because all of us in this process, in this pandemic in the year 2020, we all did begin at different places. And all of us did not end up at the same place. Some of us, unfortunately, aren't even still here. And so to be in the moment and reflect upon the moment, I would challenge. First of all, I think that reverb sort of poses a challenge to all the other creatives out there to do it differently if you can, and to do it better if you can, because we really want to see reverb as a challenge to the industry, to always elevate the conversation and challenge the conventionality of the form that, as Lydia said, is very oppressive to the marginalized voices. I think it would make the task a whole lot simpler for the writers if we could adhere to a narrative format. But every time when we found ourselves trying to box ourselves in, we realized that we were shutting somebody out. And so it was just, we realized that we wanted folks to embark on this journey wherever it is that they found themselves, and take things with them that they could. It was just it was a moment for us to reimagine creation and to co-create when everyone was on the same level. In reverb, we quickly found that there was no hierarchy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what made it what it was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, great answer, Cameron. I mean, the open-endedness, as you mentioned, Dr. Blair, of this piece is allowing so many voices in. I wonder if, as you said, this is a model, or as everyone has been saying, this is a model for creating other theater, and also looking at history, looking at the way that we perceive the past, not as a monolith, but as multi-voiced and a way of entering a way of looking at American history, most especially as not something told through a straightforward narrative, but as open to many different pathways into it. So yeah, it's a wonderful piece that models that. Yeah, we're getting close to wanting to wrap up here. We are going to, I just want to mention that we're going to post this conversation. We are recording it. We are going to post it so that people can see this conversation after they've seen the play. It'll be on our website. But before we wrap up, I just want to ask our creators and everybody who's worked on this piece, anyone who hasn't spoken so far, any of our creative folks, or anyone who would like to have any last thoughts about this piece, to please join in and say something if you'd like to. Please go ahead. Actors, designers, directors, producers.
I would like to say that there are so many people. I mean, one of the learning curves also was that in production, this kind of production, there's so many more artists involved than in a play, in a box. And I just want to thank everyone. The level of professionalism and learning and flexibility and that happened is just amazing. And our producer Bonnie Metzger is here, and our vocal coach director Tanara is here. There are so many people here. I'm sure I'm missing someone, but the work was definitely a community endeavor.
Yeah, and we do have, we're putting up on the website interviews with Jessica Fish, the director, and others who have been involved in the production. So you will be able to see some discussion with them on the website. And yeah, this is a very big project with a lot of people who aren't represented here today, and you know, couldn't be here for whatever reason, but we're so grateful to all of you for being here, and thank you so much for joining in. And I really want to thank you, Dr. Blair, for providing a context for how to view this as someone coming in from the outside, you know, as a scholar, and for looking at it. Is there anything you'd like to say as we close up this conversation?
Your voice broke up towards the end, so.
Oh, I was just asking if there's any, just saying that I think this has been a wonderful opportunity to hear from you as a scholar, coming in for a fresh perspective from the outside, and just wondered if you had any closing thoughts.
No, just what I would love to hear, you know, if it's not possible, but I would love to hear how other audience members, people coming in from the outside, responded to the piece, because that is, you know, that's the point, right? That's the point. And so I am just happy to have been invited to the conversation, and to see the piece, and to be like nourished by these young creative minds who are doing like really wonderful work in addressing the moment, as well as forcing us to find new ways to think about how art works, how we as audiences work, yeah, so thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, and thank you all so much, all the creative folks who put this incredible piece together. And it's a very unusual, wonderful piece, and we hope not only the UIC community, everybody at the UIC community sees it, but we also hope to get it out there and have lots and lots of people in Chicago and also nationally see this, because it's such a, as has been talked about so much here today, it's a model for how theater can work these days. So thank you all so much again. Thank you, Guillermo Duarte, for helping to set this up and organize it. And really appreciate everybody being here on a Sunday. Take care, everybody.
Everybody vote.
Thank you. Go vote.
Vote.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Blair, so much.
Dr. Blair, it's so nice to